Hello and a very warm welcome to this very special interview that I have on Sports Today. There is one particular individual who plays an even greater role in trying to ensure players are in the right frame of mind. Mental conditioning, mental health. There is no better person than the guest that I have today on Sports Today. Paddy Upton, former India mental conditioning coach, also India men's hockey team conditional coach, and also part of several IPL, BBL franchises. Mental health, you want the expert? It's Paddy Upton. Paddy, thank you so much for joining us in this special interview today.
Thanks very much, Siddharth, for the invitation. I look forward to having this conversation with you about this pretty important topic.
Yeah, Paddy. So basically, let us cut straight to the chase, okay? Players are taking a break because of mental health. How important and how fragile mental health is in this ultra competitive world today? And what did you look at it 10 years ago?
So, the concept of mental health is only recently become more popular or open or accepted to speak about publicly. But the reality is when sport became professional, we were able to measure the physical pressures and stresses that players were under. And there's more metrics we've got today of how much to rest them, how to manage that train and rest period so they're in the best possible space for performance. But something that's never been in the equation, mainly because it's not measurable, is what are the mental pressures, what are the mental stresses on players? When is a player overtired, overburdened, overstressed, overthinking, or got low mental, emotional energy tanks? And that's just a conversation that's never been had. But the reality is the players' visceral experience of that has always been around. But previously, if someone's been burnt out, if they're struggling, if they're having some difficulties, there hasn't really been a place to deal with it. They just had to suck it up and deal with it. And that was part of the equation. But fortunately, we're getting a little bit smarter now about recognizing that these things like physical tiredness or exhaustion, mental tiredness or exhaustion is an equal factor that needs to be catered for, with not just with athletes, but certainly with business executives, actually with everybody. We need to be managing physical, mental, emotional components of our being, and not just those.
Because when you speak about mental health in the Indian cricket team, it first came into light with Virat Kohli when he openly admitted that, yes, I had mental pressure, and then that is the reason why I took a break. In fact, he's credited you in ensuring that he got back into that right frame of mind. I mean, what was the magic potion?
I don't think Virat was the first. Maybe he's one of the most highest profile cricketers, certainly, but there's been a number of high profile athletes from a number of sports around the world who have said, I need a break for some reason or another that's attributed to some aspect of their personal and or mental, emotional life. And what Virat went through was just really a normal part of the high pressure experience of these athletes from home so much, particularly when they have a young family that puts more on them. And just kudos to and credits to Virat for actually owning up and having the courage to say, I need to have a short break. I need to address a few things in my life. And again, Virat, his skill, his attitude towards his game is quite unique. It's probably the best amongst the best in the world. But where Virat is no different to you and I, he has a brain that has thoughts that he needs to manage. His brain isn't any different to anyone else. He just manages his brain smarter than most cricketers. And when it comes to matters of the heart and the emotion, the soul, we're all wired the same as human beings. We feel pain, we feel stress, we feel guilt, we feel difficulty, we think negative thoughts. I've never worked with an athlete in my entire life that hasn't have a doubts or insecurities or vulnerabilities or negative thoughts. These are oh so human experiences that for some reason we think that these great athletes or great businessmen, they don't suffer these for some reason. They've got some magic potion. No, they don't. They're just able to manage those oh so human experiences a little bit better. And very often they rely on other people to turn to people and say, will you help me navigate this time? Just like Virat would have a batting coach and he will have a fielding coach, and he will have a physiotherapist to work on his body and a dietitian to help him with his diet. Why not have somebody, when you're dealing with matters of the emotions, sort of the heart and the mind, somebody can help me navigate this and get through this a little bit quicker than if I were to do it to myself, or for myself. So really, it was just helping Virat organize his own thinking to work more for him than against him, and any emotional matters and the emotions are attached to the brain and the thinking. And let's just get some perspective around these, put them into perspective with regards to what's going on in his life and what's going on in his cricket, so that not holding him back or weighing him down, he's able to move forward. But he didn't get rid of fear. He didn't get rid of doubts. He didn't get rid of negative thinking. He didn't get rid of the challenges. He just embraced them and was able to learn how to move forward and work with them and navigate them as opposed to them navigating it. And that equation is the same for every human being.
Absolutely. So, if it's possible for you, Paddy, like how did you go about starting this entire procedure with Virat? I mean, what are the tricks that you use? What are the techniques that you use to ensure that he's in that mental? If it's possible for you to divulge, what all did you do in Virat's mental health upbringing in that sense?
Well, how I started it was I just listened. And much of how I carried on was I listened and helped Virat organize, be a sounding board for him to organize his own thinking, organize his own experience. As any coach, Rahul Dravid, for example, is Virat's batting coach. Rahul doesn't tell Virat how to bat. He's a sounding board and he has conversations and helps Virat come to his own best answers. And it's not dissimilar in the conversations. Virat's mind is unique. He knows his mind better than anyone else. And I was able to be a trusted sounding board to help him organize his own thinking and make sense of the different things that were going on in his life. I'm not at liberty to talk about those, but the process, again, is quite universal and relevant to everybody. It's, at the end of the road, the best athletes, whether it's their technical game, their body or their mind, the best athletes in the world, they are the expert in their own game and their mind, and they use other people to help them build their body of knowledge or their awareness or the understanding of those elements of their personal and professional life. And again, I go back to it. It's not something that's specially reserved for the Indian national cricketers or Virat Kohli. All of us have the ability, particularly with the amounts of information around at the moment, and some of it's good and some is not good. We need to discern that information. But it's take responsibility for my body, my mind, my game, and see how can I be just 1% better each day. And that's what Virat looks to do every single time he goes to the gym, every time he goes to bat, every time he goes to conversation, whether it's his dietitian or his trainer or with myself. It's how can I get just that little bit better? And that's the champion mindset that is available to all of us. And the nice thing is we can all get 1% better far more easily and with far less effort than what it takes for Virat to get 1% better. He has to put in an incredible amount of work because he's so good. The rest of us, that 1% is available to us all day, every day.
Exactly. But Patty, looking at the current nature of sport at this point in time, there are a lot of backroom staff individuals who deal with the physical aspects of it. Say if there's an injury, if there's all those kind of things. There's data, like the Australian cricket team, they have a data specialist, data conditioning, and all that. But do you think in the dressing room, there isn't much of mental conditioning or mental health experts present at that point in time? Is that a worry in sport at this point in time?
Yes and no. So the reality is the change room is full of mental conditioners. They might not be expert. The coach influences the player's mind. Every time he speaks, every time he acts, it has an influence on the player's mind. Every time the captain speaks, every time the team does well or does badly, the reaction or the response of the captain has an influence on the player's mind. Every time somebody makes a mistake or does well on the field, the way their teammates behave has a real influence on their mind. So the mental conditioning happens within the culture, within a team environment. And just by having a mental coach is not necessarily going to change the culture. Culture has to be changed at the highest level with a captain, number one, with a coach, number one, then with the senior players. How are they behaving? How are they conducting themselves? How are they speaking? And what is the impact of what they are doing and they conducting themselves on the players? The BCCI and the officials that are interacting with the team. What is their interaction with the team, with the players, the way they're creating the schedules, the way they're communicating? The selectors, how they communicating the players, how they selecting, how much transparency and openness, or everything within the system that an athlete find themselves is those every single influence, things that are said things that are done and things that are not done influence the player's mind. So the idea of having just one individual mental coach to speak with individual players doesn't solve for the whole problem. And that's one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of them around. I am at my most impactful working in a team environment when I'm talking directly to the coach. So last year when I worked with the Indian team, my go-to person was Rahul Dravid and Rohit Sharma, because they are the people that have the greatest influences. Currently working with the Indian hockey team, I spend the majority of my time talking to the coaches, talking to Harmanpreet, talking to the senior players, because they are the people that set the culture, that create the environment of psychological safety or psychological fear, pressure, anxiety within the team. So yes, the mental conditioning, Siddharth, happens all the time with everything that's said and done. It's just how smartly is it being said and done, and is it positively impacting the players or negatively impacting them? And the same thing with the BCCI and the officials. They are also responsible for the kind of mindsets that players will be carrying with themselves as they travel in this 11.5-month cricket season that they're in 5-star hotels and playing the game. So it's a collective responsibility, and it's just one that I play my role in, and try and connect all of those key role players into being more aware of what is the impact of what they're doing on the players' minds. Because a player with his mind in the great space is a great asset. The fittest player with the highest skill with his mind in the wrong place is not going to perform. So that the mind is the sharp end of performance.
Now, it's interesting you said that, Paddy, about the Indian men's hockey team. I mean, it's Olympic year for them. What are the pressures and the different kind of pressures your time with the Indian cricket team as compared to the Indian men's hockey team, as far as expectations, as far as pressure? How different is it, or is it in the same plane?
I would say there's a lot of similarities. There's that the players have from their fans, very much from their families, interestingly, from their friends. There is more eyes on the Indian cricketers. So if they were to buy into the external pressures, there's probably a little bit more on the cricketers. The hockey players, some of them, they really need to be, if they're in the team, they might be enough money to support their families and their lifestyle. If they're not in the team, sometimes they're not able to make enough money. Where cricketers with the IPL and that, there's probably more opportunities. So there's some different pressures on the hockey players. And of course, the big difference between cricket and hockey is cricket is largely an individual sport. Yes, it is a team sport, where in hockey, players do need to work much more closely together. They need to run patterns of play. They need to rely on the player either side of them who they're going to receive the ball or transfer the ball to. So they need to work a lot more closely and be on the same page from a team perspective than what a cricket team does. But at the end of the day, great teams are on the same page. Even a cricket team that don't need to work together, great teams, and very often, again, I go back to the culture in the team is set by the leadership, and you've got a team, under Rahul Dravid and Rohit Sharma, for example, great leaders, not just cricket brains, but when it comes to people management, both of them have got the highest level of skill and caring. So you've got a very happy team with psychological safety, because you've got very mindful, very skilled leaders of people, as opposed to just leaders of cricket strategy. And similarly in the hockey team, also very fortunate that you've got great leaders of people, not just great tacticians and strategists in Craig Fulton and Harmanpreet Singh, the captain.
Final question, Paddy, before we wind up. November 19th, 2023, because India had lost a World Cup final at home. How does a player recover from that? And many people say, oh, players will have to move on professionally because it's the nature of the sport. But is it truly easy to move on?
Again, the answer is yes and no. The player who's very attached to results and outcomes and things that are outside of their control, that player will really struggle to move on from a defeat, because a defeat, they take it personally. The player who's very internally referent, who knows I need to take control of and be responsible for everything inside of my control, and the things outside of my control, I learn from them and I let them go. That player is able to move on a hell of a lot quicker. And really, one of the keys from a mental perspective of sustaining high performance is somebody who is internally referent, what we call it, or they look inside themselves for the truth. They ask themselves, am I doing everything I can to set myself and the team up for success? Am I being the best professional? Am I acting like a professional? Am I thinking like a professional? Do I have a professional attitude? That player, they stay much more consistent through wins and losses, where you get the confidence player who is desperate for results, for validation, and to make him feel like he's doing the right thing, and is terrified of failure because they take it personally, think, well, I'm going to be judged negatively and something's wrong and I'm not good enough because I'm failing. That player has a very difficult career. Their moods go up and down. They are the one who's more susceptible to mental illnesses or mental pressures, particularly if they go or if they get injured or if they get dropped. So the message really is take control of the things that are inside your control. Results are very often are outside of your control. They will go up, they will go down. And this current Indian team, as you said, that played on the 19th of November, they're a pretty mature team under very mature leadership. They understand that win some, you lose some. It was terribly disappointing for them to lose the final after going 10 from 10 and so convincingly win the first. But the reality is, that's the beauty and the agony of sport. If we could predict the outcome and our favorite team would win every time, we probably wouldn't have the same passionate fan following because it would get boring after a while.
Well, when November 2 happened, our mind switched to you, Paddy, on April 2, 2011. Because that's the only memory that we still have at this point in time, which gives us a billion reasons to smile. So thank you so much, Paddy, for your time. I mean, it's really great to hear you all about the insights of mental health right from the very best. So thank you so much, Paddy, for your time and enjoy your stay here in India.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Nice chatting to you, Siddharth.